Hello, welcome to Resume Writing. My name is Kim Markman and I am an employment specialist here at the Senior Source. What's the purpose of a resume? It is to land an interview and to get your foot in the door. And there are two main types of resumes. There are the chronological versus the functional. Now we have had a lot of different people with human resources backgrounds come through the Senior Source, and most of them do agree that they do prefer to see a chronological resume, but functional resumes do work really well in certain circumstances. Chronological is best if you want to demonstrate a vertical career progression, if you want to apply to a job in a similar field as you have done in the past, and you don't have large work experience gaps, although there are ways to work around that as well. Functional is best if you have large gaps in your employment history, you are in the midst of a big career change into a new industry, because it gives you the opportunity to highlight your transferable skills, although you can also do that on a chronological. And you want to promote a specific skill set. Now I know this is a little bit hard to see, and my contact information will be at the end of the presentation, so I would be happy to send templates that are easier to read. But this is a sample chronological resume, and at the top it says Human Resources Sample Resume, but it would have your name. And usually we leave street addresses out because this is an area that's very large, and sometimes employers, if they see someone living in Plano, for example, might throw that out. If their company is in Grand Prairie, they might decide that somebody lives too far away. But we do usually include a phone number, just whatever phone number is best to reach you at, and an email address and a LinkedIn URL if you have one. And then below that, we have the summary, which has taken place of the objective. And the objectives usually in the past described what you were looking for and what you were hoping to find, but the summary that has replaced it instead describes what you can do for the employer. And then below that is the professional experience in reverse chronological order. So you would have the most recent one first. We don't include the entire address of the employer, just the city and the state and the dates. And then below that is education, and usually with education, anything beyond high school, if you have a special certification or anything like that, we would put that under education. You don't necessarily have to put dates on the education. Now, a functional resume is a little bit different. This has the summary of qualifications on the top. Of course, they have it as bullet points here, and that's perfectly acceptable. But then it has the relevant skills, and it divides it by different areas. So it has the customer service skills, the technical skills, and the communication skills. So it has all those skills listed up front, where in the chronological they were listed under each job description. And the work history is at the very bottom, and in this instance they didn't put dates on it, although you can put dates on it if you prefer. And it doesn't assign any particular skills. It just says they worked at U-Haul and at the pizza place and at Chick-fil-A. So it doesn't really say what they did at any of these jobs. And then at the bottom is the education section as well. And again, I understand these are hard to see, so my contact information is at the last slide of the presentation, so just feel free to reach out to me and I'll be glad to send you some templates. So some important tips with resume appearance. Your first impression is really important. It is your one and only chance. Always be concise and specific. Don't use long sentences because resumes are scanned. They go over them very quickly. Make sure you get your message across. So again, that just goes to being concise and specific. Check spelling, punctuation, and grammar. And it's always better to have another set of eyes look at it because sometimes computers miss things. Be consistent with your style. So if you have a paragraph under one job description, make sure you don't have bullet points under the other. And bullet points are preferable anyway because, again, resumes are read very quickly and bullet points are easier to read. Make sure the font is at least 10 points, maybe even 12, because fonts aren't all created equally. Some of them at a size 10 are bigger than others at a size 12. So just make sure it is legible, it's not too small. And use resume paper if you have it. Now, an increased number of employers, they want the resume emailed. So resume paper is not as important as it used to be. But if you're at a job fair or are in a situation where you are passing out resumes in person, some resume paper might help it stand out a little bit more. And choose a style that is best for you. So both types of resumes have common content areas. There's your contact information, again, your name, and make sure that is on top of every page of the resume. And a good phone number to reach you at, your email address, and your LinkedIn URL if you have one. A summary of qualifications, your work experience, and your education. Now, references are important, but we do keep those separate from the resume and only if requested, and we usually don't specify that resumes are available upon request either. And again, I mean, if you want to use your city and state, it is not necessary to include street address, but more and more people are leaving that off altogether. But do be sure to include your email address and the best phone number to reach you at and your LinkedIn URL. And again, make sure it is on top of every page. Now, a summary of qualifications can be in paragraph form or a list of bullet points. And it just shows why you would be the best candidate for the job. It more reflects what you can do for them. And it is in place of the objective. The objective is considered outdated these days. So if you need help crafting a summary, just be sure to let me know. And the summary includes work-related accomplishments and achievements. So if you won an award at work or you got a special certification, that is a good place to put it. Language skills, if you are bilingual, that is huge, and make sure that is one of the first things they see. Computer skills, anymore, a lot of places kind of assume that you know Microsoft Office, but it's okay to put it there. But if it's something proprietary, it is always a good idea to have your computer skills in the summary, so that is one of the first things they see. And then you have your other qualities that make you a good match for their position. And with every resume, you want to have at least a basic resume written out, but you do want to rewrite your resume to every job description that you come across. So that way it is reflecting how you match that job specifically, but it also has a higher chance of being picked up by the applicant tracking system when you apply online, because the applicant tracking system is looking for the exact keywords that are listed in that job description and any honors and achievements. So with your work experience, you can use volunteer or professional experience. So if you have a gap in your resume, but you have been volunteering just to keep busy the whole time, you can completely use that as experience to fill in a gap on your resume. They're interested in your knowledge, your skills, and abilities. They're interested in what you can do for them on the job. So with every entry, include the position title, the organization name, and the location, but just the city and the state, and the dates, month and year. But you can just put years in if you can't quite remember the months. But you don't have to put in phone numbers or street addresses. That is more for the application. The resume doesn't have all that information on it. So exclude phrases like participated in or involved in, and there are alternative phrases and words that you can use. We do have a list of them here, and that is a lot to take down. So again, just feel free to contact me, and I'd be glad to send you those lists of words. Explain how you contributed to the team. And emphasize achievements using action words to communicate your skills, but it's also good to quantify things, to include numbers. So for example, if you worked in a call center, give an example of how many calls you fielded a day, or if it's accounting, just give monetary amounts if that applies. It brings it to life a lot more and gives them a much more clear picture of what your achievements are. Use 3 to 5 points under each job to emphasize your accomplishments and the knowledge gained. So make sure to emphasize your accomplishments and your knowledge, and don't make it just like a job description. And sometimes it is useful to divide your work experience as to skilled experience and other experience. So this person's very creative. They pruned a tree once, so they are allowed to put branch manager on their resume. So some words on resumes that are useless or they're just seen a lot, they're a little bit cliche. Things like outstanding, effective, strong, exceptional, good, excellent, driven, motivated, seasoned, and energetic. And that's just because they are seen a lot. They are used very frequently. But more eye-catching words are things like created, increased, improved, reduced, developed, researched, accomplished, won, on time, under budget, and known for. Those are more forceful words. They're more action oriented. So just different ways of breathing life into your text. So instead of saying you were responsible for something, you can say you were heading it up or you were in charge of, maybe you oversaw. If you developed something, maybe you shaped, created, invented, built. Duties include, again, overseeing, heading up. I would kind of avoid duties include entirely. Perform, maybe you carried out or you took action. If you managed something, you were in charge, you handled, you executed. And then coordinate, maybe you teamed up or you pulled together. Here is a list of action words for resume building, and I do understand that it's a very long list, so I will be happy to send it to you if you'd like. So here are some alternative words other than just saying you worked with others. Maybe you chaired or you coached or you collaborated with them. You taught, you teamed with, you trained. So it is more specific about how you did work with others. And the same as communicated, maybe you advertised or you corresponded with or debated even, persuaded, publicized. If you created or revised something, maybe you authored it or built it or composed it or drafted it, enhanced it even, or planned or restructured or reorganized. And if you did more data analysis, maybe you appraised something or audited it or forecasted it. Instead of just saying operated equipment, maybe you installed or maintained, built, even, programmed, ran, or serviced. If you worked with money or contracts, maybe you authorized or balanced, governed, or negotiated, or purchased, or oversaw. And if you organized something, maybe you assembled or cataloged, routed, or staged. So some additional self-descriptive words we have here, and you can kind of see there's quite a few of them here as well. So ambitious, assertive, attentive, astute, broad-minded, constructive, dynamic, enterprising, enthusiastic, experienced, and that's one that we use quite a bit. And that's a good way of putting it because seasoned they see a lot, and that's considered just a little bit outdated. Facilitator, maybe you have a lot of foresight. Independent, a lot of initiative or innovative. Logical, mature, methodical, objective, practical, productive. Resourceful, responsible or responsive. Sincere, sophisticated, systematic, and tactful. And again, I would be happy to send you a list of these words as well, because I know this is a very long list. And this is more appropriate for an interview, but yes, I think I have good people skills. What kind of idiot question is that? So with your education, include any degree or diploma, your major, your institution attended, and any minors or concentrations. And this also includes any special certifications or licenses that you may have. Although you don't have to put your license numbers on the resume, just say that you have the license or certification. And if the employer wants any proof or to dig any deeper, they will usually bring that up in the interview. The date of completion if recent, or expected completion if you are currently working on your degree or your certification. High school should not be included, or any irrelevant education should not be included. So his resume is not all lies, his name is correct. Here is our list of top recruiter pet peeves about resumes. A really big one is spelling errors, typos, and poor grammar. So it's always a good idea to have another set of eyes look over it because computers don't always pick everything up. Missing or inaccurate dates. Missing contact info, inaccurate or unprofessional email addresses. And with the contact info, if you have more than one page on your resume, make sure that it's on top of every page because sometimes the pages get separated if you're passing out a paper copy and then they don't know what page 2 it is to the page 1. So with the formatting, maybe you have a lot of boxes or tables or headers and footers and things like that. The fancier something looks, the bigger a risk it has of becoming garbled when it's sent over email. Because maybe you and the recipient have a different version of Word, or it doesn't have all the built-in features to properly read the template. So just kind of be careful of that. Just make it as simple as you can because it has a lot less of a risk of getting garbled in transit. Long, dense paragraphs with no bullet points. Bullet points are a lot easier to read when they are scanning the resume, and a long, dense paragraph is just hard to read. Just a wall of text, that way they can't scan it as easily. Lying or misleading, especially in terms of education, dates, and inflated titles. And that will eventually come out in the wash, so just be careful not to mislead in any way. Objectives or meaningless introductions. Long resumes that are more than 2 pages, although sometimes that is acceptable, especially if you're in the academic field. Sometimes they do want a bigger picture than that, so that would be okay, but typically keep it to about 2 pages. And also make sure not to make your resume too duty-oriented. You don't want it to read a lot like a job description. You want to instead emphasize what you accomplished. Unqualified candidates who apply for positions they are not qualified for. And I kind of understand the thinking behind this because you do want to kind of get your foot in the door and things like that. But with the applicant tracking systems with the online applications, usually it doesn't even get that far anymore. And you don't have to have every single point in the job description. It doesn't have to be an 100% match. As long as you have most of it, you should be fine. So some quick stats about resumes. An estimated 77% of hiring managers immediately disqualify a resume because of grammatical mistakes or typos. An additional 40% spend less than 1 minute on your resume. So that's why the bullet points are so important, because it's a lot easier for them to read down the page instead of reading the paragraphs. An unprofessional email address is a major problem for 35% of employers. I think a good rule of thumb anyway is to have an email address specifically set aside for your job search because it just helps you keep more organized. And it helps if it's maybe your first name and your last name and your birthday instead of the birth year, because that might give away age. So it can be, if Jane Smith was born on May 18th, it could be janesmith0518@gmail.com. And Gmail is seen as the most current email type. Sometimes something like AOL or Yahoo or Hotmail might look a little bit outdated. And a resume longer than 2 pages is a deal breaker for 17% of hiring managers. Resume bloopers and blunders. You will want me to be head honcho in no time. So it's good to be confident, but you don't want to be too confident. You don't want to sound too familiar. Received a plague for Salesperson of the Year. So that's another example of why it's good to have another set of human eyes, because a computer would not have picked that up. Because technically that is a word. It was spelled correctly. So spell check likely would not have picked that up. Reason for leaving last job, they were on maturity leave. So again, a computer might not have picked that one up. Am a perfectionist and rarely, if ever, forget details. It's best for employers that I not work with people. So they get kudos for being honest, but that's probably not something you want to put on a resume. Let's meet so you can ooh and ah over my experience. I have an excellent track record, although I am not a horse. Personal interests, donating blood, 14 gallons so far. And it's usually good to keep personal interests off the resume anyway, just to begin with. I am loyal to my employer at all costs. Please feel free to respond to my resume on my office voicemail. They are instrumental in ruining an entire operation for a Midwest chain store. So here's a sample cover letter, and again, I would be happy to send you a template because I do know this is hard to see. But the cover letter you can see is only a few paragraphs long. It does have the company address in there and things like that, but if you're emailing it, it's perfectly okay not to have that. And sometimes if you're emailing your resume, it's perfectly okay to have your cover letter in the body of the email and your resume as the attachment. But like the resume, it also has your name on the top and your phone number, an email address, and your LinkedIn URL if you have one. And in the cover letter, it's always good to be personal yet professional. And sell your skills and show your interest in the position and prove that you've done your research. So reference back to the job description that you are applying for and use that in your cover letter to show how well your skills and your qualifications match with that specific job description. Highlight achievements that will make you an ideal candidate for the job, because the main point of the cover letter is to entice the reader into wanting to see your resume because you are such a good match for that job. Fill the holes in your resume. And do not use the same cover letter or even the same resume for each job. You need to write both a targeted cover letter and a targeted resume for each position. And again, that is especially important with the applicant tracking systems because they are looking for those specific keywords that are in the job description. The cover letter should never be longer than 1 page, and always focus on what the employer needs, because it's always all about, just like on your resume, it's all about how you can meet their needs. If there are any specific requests in the job posting, like if they ask for salary requirements, make sure you include it. And proofread again. You really can't proofread too many times. The cover letter sections, they start with the heading and greeting. You can include the date and your name and your contact information, but if you're emailing it, that is optional. You can address the greeting to a specific person whenever possible. But you can also use the job title like maintenance supervisor or office manager or hiring manager, human resources. But do not say, dear IT department or, dear IBM or to whom it may concern. In your first paragraph, explain who you are and your reason for writing. Specify which job description you are applying for. And you might even specify where you saw that job description. And use your first paragraph also to express your skills and your enthusiasm, especially for that job, and your work experience that could contribute to their success. And the second paragraph is where you really sell yourself and reveal why you are a perfect and unique match for the position. So this is where you match your qualifications to that job description and explain why you have chosen that employer specifically. Always thank the person for taking the time to read your letter and use an appropriate closing. It's always good to say, I look forward to the next step. And also tell the employer how you plan to follow up or that you anticipate their reply and you're looking forward to speaking with them. So for the next steps, if you'd like assistance with a resume or a cover letter, if you already have one and would like it critiqued, or even if you're building one up from scratch, you can just call me at 214-525-6145 or email me at kmarkman@theseniorsource.org. Thank you very much.